So what are we going to do? We'll name the Zionists as the ones who create all these problems, and okay, we'll remove the Zionists, and now what? Will the world suddenly turn normal? No, of course it won't, because the system is still there, and it's our belief in the system that is the problem. You know, if we were to have united communities, as I've said so often, if you had the strength of numbers around you to simply walk away from the system would cease to function. You know, government only exists because we choose to give government our authority. We do so because we get knocked on the head if we don't, because we live in disunited communities, because if we stand up against the government, the people around us aren't going to stand up with us. They're just going to watch you get knocked on the head and say, well, isn't he silly? He shouldn't have done that. They don't see that all the problems they face come from the same source, and this entire thing is fiction. This entire system is fiction. It's just an idea. It's just an idea that someone put in place that we all agreed to go along with. And for the most part, we didn't even know we were doing it. We were just told that the system is real, and we were told that this is the way it is. This is what the education system's all about. It's to train you that the system is real and to instill within you this belief in authority. And we don't question it. But ultimately, it's just an idea. People have ideas, folks, and the system is just an idea. You know, some of these ideas can be good and some of them can be bad, but the idea of the system, the idea of government, has long since ceased to serve the people. Now, if it ever did serve the people, I don't think that was ever its purpose. I think the purpose of government has been to control the people right from the very beginning, to feed them a false reality, to keep them corralled within this people farm, to keep them appeased, to give them all sorts of stuff to entertain themselves with so they don't really notice the servitude they're living in. But I don't think it really serves any purpose at all, and I don't think we need it. I think the real problem is whatever happened to shut us down. So we were so limited in our potential, we were so limited in our view of what reality is. In fact, I think there's so much going on around us that were people suddenly to find their whole senses come online, their high senses come online, and all of reality was made visible to them, and they were made aware of everything around them, they would probably think themselves completely and utterly insane. But the problem is, as I said, that no one can see the bigger web. No one is even prepared to really acknowledge its existence. And even within the resistance, there's too many people who just want to be gurus, want to be the leader, want to be the one who's got all the answers and shout down everybody else and snap and accuse anybody who disagrees with them, divide and conquer. It's a complete schmozzle. I mean, it certainly has a lot of potential, but in its current form and with its current direction and the current attitude of many people within it, there's no freedom to be found in the resistance, because the resistance can't even step back from itself, generally, and look at the bigger picture or even acknowledge that there may be a bigger picture. Too many people within the resistance have locked themselves into belief systems, or they want someone to blame. And sure, there's a lot of people to blame. There's a lot of people, a lot of mechanisms, a lot of institutions that we can point the finger at. All of them are corrupt. All of them can be held to blame in some way. But again, if we remove all of them, then what? Because if people are still not in contact with who and what they are, where will the world go from that point? And if people were to regain this connection to who and what they are, then there's nothing else they have to do. Because once you get that connection, you can see just how easy it would be to step away from the system. And all the fighting and all the finger pointing and all the stuff we do simply distracts people from ever doing that inner work and looking within and discovering the true power that they have. You know, while they're looking for the way out is within. And because they are constantly battling externally and they never really give themselves the focus they deserve or the attention that they need, they think it's all some airy-fairy new age spiritual rubbish. They're not ever really prepared to step into their power. They want to shout and scream and point the finger and wave their fist at someone and say, you are the one. But then they want to rally the troops to go and fix it. Most of them, that's what they want to do. They want to point the finger at someone and then scream for someone else to fix it. You know, they can identify the problem. Okay, it's you, Mr. Rothschild or whatever. I name you as the problem. And that's it. That's what they do. And they sit there naming him as the problem, and they don't do anything about it themselves. They just expect someone else to do something about it, and they think that they've got the key to the puzzle there because they've got someone to point the finger at. And really, it's just a distraction from what it is that holds the system up itself, which is our compliance to it. Our compliance to it because of our lack of understanding, our lack of knowledge of the true value of ourselves. It's such a paradox that we're caught in, and it's such an endless loop, an endless cycle that we're caught in. And even the resistance is just this endless cycle, this endless finger pointing, this endless shouting each other down, not ever stepping back and looking at the bigger web that holds the whole thing together.
Tonight on the show, I have Max Igan. I'm telling you, this is one of the researchers that was in the beginning with my process of awakening up to the bullshit reality that we live in, this matrix. And you can go to his website, thecrowhouse.com, his YouTube channel, which is The Crow House. He has many great videos, and his research is phenomenal. His research has awakened a lot of people with just this dream world that we live in. And I'm not going to do much of an introduction with him. I will give everything that you need to know about Max Igan in the description below. So just check it out for yourself. But most of you that are subscribers to me on my YouTube channel are already familiar with Max Igan. Welcome to the show, Max Igan. How you doing, man?
I'm good, brother. Thanks for asking me on. Pleased to come and have a chat to you.
And we were just talking pre-show, Max, about this awakening process. And I just told you about, I love my wife to death. And if I could, I would live off grid in a heartbeat. Of course, I say off grid, but something similar, because I believe the internet is one huge tool against the enemy out there, which the enemy, being whatever name you want to call them, the elite, the cabal. And it's just a big process of awakening people, because if it wasn't for the internet, your research would not have helped with that process of awakening me, Max. So my thing is, if I could live off grid, I would. But the thing, my wife, she's not going to do it. And I believe that a lot of people like me are stuck in this, I don't want to say shithole, because I wouldn't change anything in the world. I love my wife. But how can we as a society push forward into a new paradigm and out of this old world methodology whenever we're literally stuck, Max?
Well, that's the thing. It's a really difficult question, and as I was saying in the break, it isn't really completely necessary for you to wake your wife up. She will wake up at her own pace. I'm in a similar situation with my son, who's completely in the matrix. I would prefer to heal the world without him ever knowing that it was broken. That's kind of the attitude that I have towards that. You being awake, what you can do is be aware of the situation that your wife's facing, unbeknownst to her, and provide a safe environment for her to function in. Maybe a little frustrating, but we're all in this position. We're all in the matrix. We're all part of the system in some way, no matter how much we want to be out of it. Even me being a nomad the way I have for most of my life, I still have to have a passport. I still have to use money. I still have to participate in the system to a degree. So it isn't like we can just step out of it. It's providing a good moral example for your wife by, the knowledge that you have from being awake and how it's changed you into a better person, leading by example in what you do. This is the most beneficial thing I think you can do in this sort of a situation. And this is what will in turn wake them up. Like I live a very nomadic lifestyle, and it would be very difficult for a lot of people to do what I do and feel comfortable in their life. And it would be even doubly difficult to function in any type of a relationship doing what I do. This is why I'm single, because it's very difficult to find a woman who wants to just be a nomad and bounce around the world the way I do. So, it's a balance you've got to come to. I mean, perhaps these relationships that we get in, these loving relationships we get in where there's one person awake and the other person in the matrix, well, you're there to provide that buffer for her so that you can protect her from the system, which you wouldn't be able to do if you didn't have this knowledge. But again, leading by example and showing you're a better person because you've got this knowledge. You're not a paranoid conspiracy freak.
Mm-hmm.
That will be all the help that you need really to give her to help her wake up to what's really going on. And it's getting more and more in people's face anyway. So, they're going to see it eventually. And the best thing you can really do is to be a safety net for when that happens.
Exactly, and well said, Max. Very well said. And the thing is, just like with the things that we are into, the things we research, we read, just because we look into something, we just let's say just tonight, Max, just because we discuss something, whatever it may be, doesn't necessarily mean we believe in it, but we always get this label that, oh, you're a conspiracy tinfoil hat nut job, just because I'm talking about 9/11 or consciousness or whatever it is. False flags, labeled a nut job. Just because I'm talking about a particular subject doesn't necessarily mean I believe in it. I believe everything deserves the attention. Everything deserves I guess everything needs to be communicated, or just like what we're doing right now, Max. We're discussing, whatever topics we're going to be discussing tonight. And the thing is, whenever people are labeling people like us, they're really showing cognitive dissonance, because are they just really too afraid to look outside the box? And are they just too conditioned through modern academia and they're pretty much just a brain drain uh, human being, I guess, in this society?
Well, yeah, look, people are very conditioned not to want to think outside of the box, and actually quite afraid to think outside of the box and to view people who do think outside of the box from a perspective of fear. I mean, it's just, they don't want to think about these things. I used to say to my mother, tell her what was going on, and she'd say, look, even if it's true, I don't want to know because I'm quite happy in my little comfort zone here. So that's the problem that we face. And people will label any outside of the box thinking as something to be afraid of. Unfortunately, this has been propagated by the government and media with all this terrorism rubbish. Anybody who thinks differently to you may be a terrorist. Anybody who questions the government may be a terrorist. I mean,
Hmm.
why would you ever think anything bad about the government? And any questions that anybody has about the system at all, people are just taught to fear this sort of stuff. People are trained to be very superficial, very disconnected from themselves. It's all about, Snapchat and Instagram and what we look like and instant gratification. With smartphones and all this smart technology, iPhones and all this sort of stuff as well. This is a dopamine addiction that people are suffering, which is underlying all of this as well. Because when you click on an icon on your phone, a little releases a little dopamine burst into your brain, so you get a feeling of happiness, instant gratification. And when this happens second by second by second, so our attention span has been reduced down to a few seconds, and we're measuring every moment by the amount of pleasure we receive from that moment through the mechanism of things such as iPhones and games and all this instantaneous gratification that we're receiving. So when you come along and you start trying to tell people this type of information, this isn't clicking any of those little dopamine cells. It isn't giving them instantaneous gratification. They're not feeling good about this particular moment. So therefore it's something to be feared, because you've knocked them out of their comfort zone, you know. And with the human race as well, I mean, we've had our attention span reduced to less than a goldfish. So people don't want to think about anything that makes them think too much. They don't want to think about anything that makes them think outside of the box. They just want that instant gratification, and that's how they measure every day and every moment of each day, by the amount of pleasure they receive from that moment. And that's what makes it very difficult. This is what makes it so hard to communicate this type of information to people, and why so many people won't wake up until it actually hits them in their face. And then when it does, they don't really know what to do about it. They just go straight into a state of fear. They're usually dealing with police officers wearing black Kevlar that are twice the size as everybody else, so it's a very fearful situation for them. They're not prepared for it. They're just not able to think in any way defensively against this system. So they just don't want to rock the boat, because if it comes for them, they can't see any way out. So, we've got a very, very effective fear based mind control system happening. And this is what causes a lot of people to simply not want to think outside of the box and to label you as a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist nut job just because you're doing so. It's just training, it's programming. You can't really help them, but we don't need them all to wake up anyway. We don't need the whole world to wake up. We just need the people who are awake to get a little bit of focus. I mean, even in the American War of Independence was won by like 1 to 3% of the population or something. We don't need everybody to come on board. You just got to find some way of focusing the independent media. I've been trying to do this for many years, but it's very difficult because so many people within the independent media even all seem to have their own agenda, and no one's really prepared to, reach some common ground and get some common focus. If we did that, we could change things very quickly, I believe.
Very well said, Max. And whenever I look at like the modern day police officers, it's like it's really not a civilian, I guess, public police force that really is for the people and by the people. Now it's that everybody is guilty until proven innocent. And that is one reason why I got out of the military, because I was military police and I was going to do that in the, I guess, military terminology, the civilian world, what they term. But then I came across people like your research and other people's research, and I had to get the hell out of Dodge because I, I'm not against the military, but the thing is, the military is being misled by, a bunch of egotistic maniacs, and they're all pretty much just on doom and gloom and world domination. But before we get into some of that, it just makes you think of the modern day police officer. You look at that compared to the police officers in the Andy Griffith show. What the hell are we getting to? Like, where are we going with this crazy world, this society? And the quote that pops in my head, Max, is by the famous quote by Michael Elner. Just look at us. Everything is backwards. Everything is upside down. Doctors destroy health. Lawyers destroy justice. Psychiatrists destroy minds. Scientists destroy truth. Major media destroys information. Religions destroy spirituality. And governments destroy freedom. And is that the reason why it seems like we are actually devolving as a human race? I'm very optimistic now, but it seems like we are devolving, though.
Well, we are, and we're being purposely devolved. I mean, through everything, not just through the programming and through this militarization of the police, but all through all the genetic engineering, through the engineering of the food, the engineering of our sexuality, the fact that they're saying there's 34 genders now. I mean, what the hell is that? There isn't actually 34 genders. There's only two. It doesn't matter what your sexual preferences is or what you like to get up to, but there's actually only two genders, and that's just the way it is. It's called basic biology. So this is the sort of stuff we're heading to. Interesting what you were saying about the military and how the military is being basically used for nefarious purposes. This overlaps into our society as well. I mean, all the rule that we're under in our society is in fact military rule. Martial law, maritime admiralty law, all this sort of stuff. Even the fact that you use the term Mr. or Mrs. in front of your name, these are all military terms. If you put a Mr. in front of your name, you're saying, yes, I agree that I'm under military law. So even the flag of the United States is a wartime flag, which puts everybody under military law. You haven't used the peacetime flag of the United States, I think, since the country was formed. 2 or 3 months after the country was formed, they changed the flag and put up the military wartime flag, and so everybody's been under military rule ever since. That's why we're subject to all these things. You go to a court. If you go to a court, if a police officer comes to you and charges you with whatever, and you go to the courtroom, if you look at the court document, you'll find all the police officers are there as non-registered entities. You're the only registered entity in the court, so you're the only one liable for anything, and it's just one big energy harvest and money harvest. That's what it's all about, and it's all military law anyway. So, the whole society's been hoodwinked. We really have. We've been hoodwinked on so many levels. But these things are coming more and more to people's faces. Even the militarization of the police. Coming back here to Australia, seeing all the police wearing black Kevlar now, it looks like you're being pulled over by a military force, not by a police officer, So this is kind of waking people up too, I think. They're doing it under the guise of protecting you from terrorism. Now, how can this guy in black Kevlar getting out there making a nuisance of himself, pulling over people for no reason at all, or just checking on you, give you a random breath test or whatever? Well, hang on. What's the reason? You can't just pull someone over for no reason and say you're just checking on them. I mean, what is that? That's just making a nuisance of yourself, which is actually against the law. And you're pulling people over in this outfit, which is, you dress like Batman. It's quite terrifying to people. So, they're just
And the reason why I
terrorizing
think they
people.
continued, sorry to interrupt, Max, but the reason why I think they continue to do that is because we're not pushing back. We're not fighting back. I'm saying we, I would say the majority of the human population of society, we are just permissive or submissive, and we would rather just go along with the authorities. And that's a word right there for you, Max, the authorities. And we would just rather believe everything that they have to say because they have the best interest of us in their hands. And because and I think that's all bullshit, Max, because really I think people are just lazy. I think people are lazy and they rather have somebody to do the fighting, to do the protection. And yes, take away my freedoms. Please do that. If it means I can have my iPhone, my computer, Kim Kardashian, whatever it is, just uh, uh, just keep doing what you're doing and let me have all my possessions. What you think, Max?
Well, yeah, and that's the way they do it. That's why they use these brutal police as well. I mean, we're never going to stand for the authority that government claims it has over us if they didn't intimidate us first. So they'll have these big burly police officers pulling you over and giving you breath tests and whatever. And this is your basic interface between yourself and the system is these police officers. You can go to the courtroom or you can go to the local council chambers or whatever and try to get some sort of a satisfaction there, but you won't. But this is the interface that we get presented with. We think of the system and we think of big burly police officers dressed in black Kevlar who terrorize us at every opportunity. So people are very, very intimidated and they don't want to stand up for themselves. And they can't ever stand up for themselves because they're disunited as a people. We judge each other by the size of our front door and what our different preferences are. All these
Hmm.
tribal things that are interjected into our society, different football teams, different parties to vote for, different this, different that, different associations, different clubs. So we're all in competition with the people from the other clubs and the other associations. So there's no unity everywhere. And we think of the system, we think of these big black burly police officers. The politicians go out anywhere, they surround themselves by these guys again. So this is our interface. This is what we see. It's very intimidating. So a lot of people simply aren't prepared to step up against the system because that is their first thought. Is that's what they're going to have to deal with, these big, heavy guys with tasers who just like hurting people. So, it's very clever, but it's all mind control. But the whole thing's been constructed to create this image of the system being all powerful. The problem is getting to these police officers and waking these guys up. But look at them. I mean, some of these guys are like androids. They're huge. It's
Hmm.
almost like there's two types of human beings. Like they're feeding the general population genetic stuff in the food to make them all thin and wimpy. And yet these police officers look like they're all on steroids. They all look like Godzilla.
Hmm.
It's incredible. So, how do you stand up against people like that? Plus, they've got all the weapons, but it's all done for a reason, just to create this air of power and intimidation around the people, around the government, so then they can just up the powers a little bit more and push the people, push back more and more. And how do we push back against them? What are we going to push back against the police officers on the side of the road? That's not going to get you anywhere. The way to push back is if don't pay any of their fines or anything they give you and go and stand up against it in court and ask a few questions in court and push back that way. As much as you don't like going to court, that's the most effective way to push back against the police is to stand up for yourselves and to not just take it all lying down. Don't believe that their authority actually exists because it's just an idea. Ask the right questions. Go in and challenge what they ask you to do because basically it's just people farming and slave trading and it's extorting money out of you. That's all it's for. Most of these laws are just to extort money out of people. They don't bear any real reason at all. I mean, they don't help society at all. They don't protect society. They're just there to extort money out of people and to intimidate people and to exalt the rulers. So, people need to question all of this stuff. They need to stand up against it, but do it in the right way.
And a lot of it boils down to Max ego, because I guess we don't have to get into the reptilian part of the brain, but a lot of people say that the ego, which a lot of you have discussed numerous times, and other researchers as well. But Carl Jung said it perfectly. The self is not only the center, but also the whole circumference, which embraces both conscious and unconscious. It is the center of this totality, just as the ego is the center of consciousness. And he said it perfectly. And um, I guess, why does it seem, Max, so hard to break through the ego paradigm? Is ego a human construct, or is ego woven into the very fabric of our DNA.
Well, ego is necessary. If you look at ego, it's a part of who you are. Without ego, you wouldn't have any sense of being, any sense of worth. The problem is false ego. The type of false ego that makes you feel superior to others, the type of false ego that manufactures a false threat from others, which is usually what most superiority complex comes from, is because you see other people as a threat to you, so you need to stand your ground a little bit more than perhaps you should.
Mhm.
This is false ego. It's the difference between ego and false ego. Ego is what makes you want to stand with pride. Ego is what makes you want to be a warrior and what makes you want to protect people, protect your family, protect yourself, and be proud of who you are. See the value in yourself. You couldn't have any of this without ego. So, it is an absolutely essential part of who we are. But it's differentiating between what ego is and what false ego is. That
What's
that's the issue.
exactly, and what we do, the ego does help. It can help protect you. It can help you from getting controlled and manipulated. And because I guess without any kind of ego, I guess we'd all be slaves, right?
Well, yeah, we wouldn't
Well,
have any
physically,
value.
well,
We
like
wouldn't
we
feel.
wouldn't we wouldn't know that we're slaves instead of just you know really instead of being slaves to the matrix.
Yeah, yeah, well, maybe, but we would probably be willing slaves and know we were slaves, and we'd be okay doing that. I mean, without ego, we wouldn't have any value. You wouldn't have any self value at all. You need ego to have self value.
Hmm.
So it's a different thing. Ego's got a bad rap because of the different variations of ego and the concept of false ego. And that's what I call false ego, that which manufactures a false threat, that which poses you against others rather than um, helps you to see the value in yourself, but also see the value in others and to cooperate with others. That's normal ego, you
Hmm.
know. And sure, you're going to be attracted to certain people. It's going to be certain people that you don't want to hang around because you just don't feel comfortable around them. That's perfectly natural, and that's not ego either. The fact that I just want to hang out with this certain group. We're always going to be attracted to people who we resonate with and we share energy with and who make us feel comfortable. That's not really a cliquey ego thing. I mean, it can be, in this social system. People can lead themselves into that type of thing, but it's being aware of it, being aware of what your attraction is to other people, why you choose to associate with certain people and not with others. But very often it's good to associate with people you don't get along with. There's a wonderful saying, I can't remember who said it, but I don't like you very much. I must get to know you better. Or I don't like you very much. I must spend more time with you
Sounds like one of my ex
because
girlfriends.
that. Well, that's how you get to know yourself. If you don't like something about someone, it's usually a reflection of something about yourself. And so
Hmm.
it's good to spend time with these people and break down these barriers that you have with these people because you can both learn from it.
What do you think is I guess, the best way to, I guess, a few examples just for people out there that are listening to this, that will be listening to this, to break through, I guess, the false ego or the bad ego. The and I guess and with that, what are some ways for us to consciously evolve out of this, I don't know, reptilian mind construct, the bad ego part?
Look, it's seeing the value in yourself. Ultimately, I think, you know, false ego and our need to project all the time usually comes from insecurities because, the inner child or whatever. There's something bad about yourself, something you're not satisfied with, that you need to project this on others. It's getting through that, seeing the value in yourself. Realizing it's all about the experience. With whatever flaws you may perceive you have, or whatever goals you think you're aiming for. I mean, it's really all about the journey, and you came here to experience life from your own unique perspective. So, really, where's the problem? Where's the problem that anybody has with anybody? When you realize the beauty of that, where's the problem? How come we have all these problems with people? And if we were to break down all these barriers with people, we could move through this very, very quickly. We don't need to be doing any of the stuff that we're doing, you know, and it's just getting people to see through that. I mean, that's what will help people stand up against the system as well, is if they can just get the value in themselves to simply ask the questions of, hang on, why do we have to do any of this stuff you're making us do? It's not what we employ government to do. Remembering what our place in society is. We all have value. Every single one of us has equal value, and government is simply employed to manage infrastructure for us. So we don't need to be doing any of this sort of stuff. All these sort of little common things, just these things of what this reality is, can really help. Seeing the value in yourself and seeing that in everybody else. You're not anything special. Everybody is something special. We are all here to experience this incredible journey. And really, when you get down to it, I mean, you can start looking into physics and consciousness and your DNA and where consciousness really comes from and all that sort of stuff. And you begin to realize that there's only really one of us here experiencing itself from 7 billion different perspectives. And, we don't have to do any of this. So the whole thing's pretty fantastic when you can think of it that way. And just the fact that we can communicate like this, just the fact that we've got this experience, this world to live in, it's all amazing. It's all absolutely amazing. We're caught up in this cycle of doing all this stuff that doesn't mean anything, running around on these treadmills everywhere that just don't go anywhere. And you know, I don't know. It's hard finding what it is. It's going to allow people to step back, even just have the time to step back and just consider all of this for the moment. Everyone's so busy running on the treadmill, trying to collect paper, thinking it's about building this pile for them to sit on. And that's what their life's about. I've got a bigger pile than you. I won. What's that all about? That doesn't do anything. You just got
Mhm.
this big pile then and you're sitting on it and you can't leave or go and do anything because you've got this huge pile and you get up on top and you go, well, hang on, there's nothing here. It's just this big pile of shit. There's nothing here. So I know people that have done that have gone right through the whole system, made enormous fortunes, bought islands, bought all sorts of stuff, and they got to this, go for this utopia that was promised them, and they get there, they got all this money, millions of dollars, and they go, well, there's nothing here.
Yes,
So they just
and
give
they
all
are
their
some of the
businesses
most
away.
unhappiest or most unhappy people there is too.
Many of them are. I know a guy got to that point and he just went, well, hang on, I don't need to do this. And he went home, he sold all his businesses, paid off all his debts, allowed his wife to pursue her art career, and just got a new business card that says father. And that's what he does now. And he just stepped out of the whole system because he realized he had all these millions of dollars, and all he did was work to make more money to keep his family happy. He realized his family is missing out on the one thing they want, which is him, and he's missing out on his family because all he's doing is working. What for? He's already got millions of dollars. He doesn't need to work anymore. So he just stepped out of the whole thing. And that's the way to do it. I mean, if you're going to go and buy into the system and go for it and make all this money, well, step out while you're still young. Once you've got the money, you don't need to keep doing it. Step out and then go and enjoy your life. But don't
And
get caught to this rat race and thinking it's about the one with the most wins because it's really not.
exactly, Max. And just like I said, you explain break everything down very well. And you're talking about, of course, we was talking about the money aspect just a little bit. And it makes me think, and you mentioned the government as well. It makes me think about these selected officials, or the ones that are getting into office, and pretty much there's, I would say most of them, they have their own agendas up their sleeve. And the thing is, how do we, as a human race, move forward and elect and have faith in the right political figureheads in office, without jeopardizing the moral high ground of human rights? Because to me, Max, most people in office, regardless of how truthful they may seem, will eventually fall prey to dark agendas.
Well, they seem to. Unfortunately, especially in the United States, you've got things such as APAC, which forces people to sign the APAC treaty in order to get funding to even run for office. So it's a tricky thing. And even with what we do, we don't want the whole system to come crashing and burning. We just don't want that. I mean, what would be the other options if the system was to just crash and burn? If we were to just all rise up and overthrow the government, it'd be chaos. It wouldn't be anarchy. It wouldn't be self-governance. It'd be absolute chaos.
Hmm.
So it would take at least a few generations to lead people back to a point of education where we were able to govern ourselves. So, we need to, get good people in there running for office. Unfortunately, we do need the system there at the moment because we need to use the system to
Hmm.
lead us back to a point where we don't need the system. But like I said, that's going to take at least three generations, at least, to be able to educate people to a point of self-governance. I mean, My God, what's happened to the education system? It's going to take 2 generations just to lead people back to a point where they can read properly and spell properly and have basic life skills again, because we've lost all of that in the last couple of generations. It's been phenomenal what they've done. So, we're in a pretty precarious situation. We need to realize that the corruption is there and that the system is flawed. Not that it's broken. It's not broken. It's designed to do exactly what it is designed to do, and it's doing quite well. But we really need to realize that it's flawed, and we need to start finding mechanisms that can cause the people within society to stand up for themselves. Liability notices, whatever we can think of to operate within the system and attract the right politicians, attract the right people. I'm sure there's politicians in there and even police officers in there that are quite prepared to stand up. They can see how corrupt the system is and they're quite
Hmm.
prepared to stand up and do the right thing. But with the general population being in this incredibly disorganized state, I mean, it's a mishmash. Even the independent media, it's a mishmash. Nobody can agree on anything.
I was
It's
in the
all this
military, Max,
infighting.
and
So,
saw how screwed up the system was, and that's what made me get out.
well, yeah, exactly. So why are any of these politicians or any of these military or police or anybody, why are they going to stand up and lead the charge when they're not going to have the support of the general population behind them? I mean, they might have the support of the general population in theory, in as much as everybody wants change, but everybody's so much squabbling amongst themselves, they're not going to have anyone rally behind them. It's going to be too much of a shit fight. So
Hmm.
who's going to stand up against the system from within the system? How are we ever going to get an honest politician in there until society displays some sort of intelligence and some sort of adulthood and actually stand up and start calling things out ourselves and start leading the charge ourselves and attract these politicians to the population so that once they hear the people saying the right things, you're going to get people standing up. But people will stand up and say the right things, and they're not associated with all this other rubbish, which is
Hmm.
completely irrelevant and has nothing to do with it. So,
Yeah, it boils down, Max, that because I guess democracy to me will always be, I say always, at least in just like you said, within the next few generations. Um, Democracy will always be infiltrated by a few men who do not have the remaining population's best interests at heart. And that's the thing. How do we overcome the system? Do we really need some type of huge event to awaken on a massive scale the rest of the population to where we just flush the whole shit system down the toilet?
well, possibly. I mean, that would be good. But I mean, I think we just need to say the right things and get it to enough ears. If enough people could hear the right message, I'm sure many people would rally behind it. It's just getting the message to them, because the mainstream won't play the message. The mainstream won't give you anything.
Hmm.
So it's just getting the message to the people. Hopefully, we don't need an event. If that's what it takes, well, that's what it takes. But it'd be nice to think that we could just do it without that. We could just rally the people to stand up for themselves. With the whole frog in water syndrome that's going on now, they're turning up the heat so gradually that many people simply aren't seeing it, unfortunately. And they won't see it until it's a little bit too late. And with the whole smart grid as well, I mean, this is what's rolling out underneath everything is the whole smart system. And that's what's really the big problem. That's the end game. While there's all this other stuff going on, the police on the street and all this threat of this and threat of that and all this stuff, physical stuff to worry about around us, this whole smart grid's being rolled out. Everything's being digitized, currency's being digitized, everything's going smart. And once that all comes online and the whole smart grid's in place, then it's game, set, and match. It doesn't matter what we do from that point. We have to prevent that from coming online. That's the issue. And that's a lot of what I think all this transgender stuff is about as well. The fact that there's 34 genders, this will enable people that have been, shall we say, enhanced by transhumanism. And even with Sophia, the robot, being given citizenship, it kind of humanizes that. This will allow a robot to have a gender, or a person who is artificially enhanced to have a gender, to be able to claim a gender. So it kind of normalizes all of this as well. It leads us more into transhumanism. So yeah, the whole thing's related, and that's why I think they're ramping things up so much at the moment, because this whole AI grid, this whole smart grid's coming online underneath it all. So we're being given so much other stuff to worry about, so much stuff to distract ourselves with, just so we won't see this.
And just like that quote by Michael Elner, everything is backwards. And you were talking about transgenderism. Okay, how in the hell, Max, can something like transgenderism? Um, it's okay to let your, just like I Am Jazz, that TV show. It's okay to let your little kid reconstruct their bodies and their genitals and become a transgender. That's okay. That's okay to do that. But a simple little plant that is grown from the earth, marijuana, is illegal.
Yeah, because if you were smoking that, then you wouldn't be letting your kids play with their genitals in that way and do all this transmutation to their body. It'd be a little bit more awake. Yes, disgraceful. It's absolutely disgusting. I mean, before kids have got any idea of what sexuality is, they're training them to be. It's basically playing make believe. I mean, you get a kid and you play make believe and teach a kid to be anything you want. You teach a kid that it's a puppy dog if you want, you know. And you can easily teach a little boy that he wants to be a little girl, and a little girl she wants to be a little boy. It's quite easy to do that with young kids, and it's disgraceful. It's absolutely
It seems like,
disgraceful.
Max, we are being controlled by stealth through, almost, it makes you wonder, here's my tinfoil hat. Who is sitting behind the scenes in that dark room calling the shots when it, especially when it comes to this programming through television? Because a lot of this transgenderism and a lot of other things out there is being programmed in the young minds through television, cartoons, movies, what have you. And so they grow up. It's almost like it's incremental warfare to change society in the direction that they want to bring us in the future. And I guess give me your take on that. And does that kind of lead into the AI, artificial intelligence?
Well, it all leads towards the same thing. Where it's all coming from, I mean, you'll get accused of being anti-Semitic if you say where it's all coming from. But I mean, this has been part of the plan to create the Goyim, basically merge all of the races that aren't Jewish together. This is why the Jews were expelled from so many countries, because they were destroying the moral standards of all the countries. This was the big problem in Germany. The first plays that promoted homosexuality, transgenderism, adultery, all this sort of stuff, all by Jewish authors, all designed to lower the moral standards of the West and to merge all the races together. And like I said, you get accused of all sorts of things for even saying that. But yeah,
Mhm.
that's where it's coming from. That's absolutely where it's coming from. And it's been an ongoing plan. It's been a very long plan. And that's who's controlling all the AI as well. Even a lot of it's been done through Saudi Arabia, which is all joined at the hip with Israel. So it's all part and parcel to the same thing. This is about the destruction of the West, the merging of the races together, the destruction of the white races. It's very unfashionable to be a white heterosexual male at the moment. Anybody else is an ethnic minority, except white heterosexual males. These are the most evil things on the planet, apparently. So it's all part of the same plan, but that's where it's coming from.
And a lot of this, I think the reason why it's it's leading to, just like what you said, I guess it seems like we're going down this rabbit hole really fast. And you talk about the AI and I think, have you heard of the 5G conspiracy? I'm sure you have.
Oh yeah, 5G. I've done quite a few videos on
Hmm.
5G about what's going on with the whole 5G system is integral to the whole AI system as well. And the 5G system, what a lot of people don't realize is that once it comes online, it'll be like you're permanently living inside an airport scanner. That's the kind of frequencies that everybody will be subject to. So all those people who opt out of airport scanners, it won't matter once the 5G comes online. You're going to be living in that all the time. It's an active denial system underneath all that as well. Very, very dangerous system, and it's essential for the smart grid to work properly because they need very, very
When do
fast
they plan on it to come
communications.
online, Max?
Next year, it should all be coming online, fully online by 2020, and they want it to be fully autonomic, all completely run by AI by 2025. That's the plan. And the rollout is very, very quick. They're rolling it out now. They want it. They want it all. I think there's certain places that are 5G already, but they want it all completely up and running by the end of 2018, I think, and right around the world by the end of 2020.
how do the powers that shouldn't be, whatever name you want to call them, the decision makers, the elite cabal, whatever, how are they protecting? How will they protect themselves from this 5G? Because it's almost like it's half depopulation, half artificial intelligence moving us towards this transhumanism ideology agenda.
Well, they want transhumanism. They want the enhancements, and most of them are just psychopaths anyway. They just want the world to burn. They don't care. So, how they're going to protect themselves? Well, there's a lot of underground bases, all sorts of stuff like that. There's great possibility that many people will be in there. Um, but it's how the AI is going to use it is the interesting thing. I think their hubris is what's going to destroy them, these people. I don't think they realize what they're creating, because once the system becomes fully autonomic and AI takes over, it won't differentiate between Rothschild and Smith or Goyam and Jew or any of that sort of stuff. It'll simply do what it needs to do. And the problem will be once the system becomes fully autonomic, and then once people attempt to regain control of the system and regain control of the internet, the possibility of the internet or the intelligence that will by then be running the internet, whether it will see humans as a threat or not and choose to retaliate against humans. Because it will be controlling the 5G system, which is an active denial system. I mean, all sorts of worms can be opened with this. So it's a huge Pandora's box that they're putting in place. But basically, what we're doing is we're weaponizing the airwaves. We're digitizing every aspect of our lives. We're handing the keys to this over to an artificial intelligence, which really doesn't care about humanity. So it's not a very smart thing to be doing. So, the problem is with the digitization of everything. And this is happening, as I said, under the carpet. It's being rolled out under the carpet. While we're all
Mhm.
worried about this, we're worried about that, worried about war with North Korea or what the government's doing, or, whether we can get the right politicians in place and all sorts of stuff, all stuff that needs to be looked at. The militarization of the police, all these things that we're given on the ground to deal with in our everyday lives. So we just don't look at what this smart grid is, and we accept this smart grid and we just bring it online ourselves under the guise of convenience in our lives. That's what's happening. All these little things that are more convenient for us are all part of this smart system. And the reason they're ramping up the police state and ramping up all of the theatre of conflict in every aspect of society, in every aspect of our lives, is simply to keep us distracted from all this stuff that's rolling out. There'll never be war with North Korea or any of this sort of stuff. What'll happen in that situation is, it'll escalate and escalate and escalate, and then China will step in and save the day, and it will appease North Korea, and it will appease the United States, and the whole world will go, oh my God, China just saved the world, and then we'll agree to let China run the new Silk Road. The whole currency will switch over to digital. The United States will lose its position as the global reserve currency, and we'll see a very, very different world, I think, within the next 12 to 18 months.
Do you think that China, I really don't know how to say it, but do you think China is, I guess, the good guys in this fight?
No, there are no good guys. There are no good guys. It's just a system of control. Which one's going to work? But I
Hmm.
think the Chinese work ethic is what you're going to see introduced into the United States. It's the same people running the whole show. China, Russia, North Korea, America. It's all theatre. The whole thing's theatre for the masses. It's all Bilderbergers and top level Jesuits and stuff that run the show. All these governments and economies, it's all theatre for the masses. The United States has been used to create this war machine and to vilify the West so that the West can now be collapsed. The controlled demolition of the United States. That'll be done by this war with North Korea, because what will happen from the result of it was, like I said, China will appease the situation. China will come and save the world. The new Silk Road, just look up One Belt, One Road. This is the new Silk Road that's going to open with China at the top. And on that new
I'm
trade
actually looking at it
route,
right now on your video. What's about to happen? You have about 116,000 views on that video, and I would try to give the link to this video in the description below for everybody. But yeah, go ahead and discuss, I guess, about this China's One Belt One Road initiative.
yeah, well, that's what I was saying. That's exactly what I was talking about on that video, how this is all going to happen. This is like a new Silk Road, new trade agreement that's going to happen. It will squash England out of the picture. It will squash the United States out of the picture. And I think they will probably use a blockchain currency or a digital currency to run trade on this new economic Silk Road. And then that will mean the United States will lose its position as the global reserve currency, because Bitcoin's making sure of that anyway. All the cryptocurrencies are having the effect of undermining all of the local currencies of many countries. And this is a good thing in many ways, and it's a bad thing in many ways. Like I said, we don't want the system to just crash. The cryptocurrencies would be great, but when you look at the smart system depends on digital currency. It doesn't matter whether it's crypto or not. So the cryptocurrencies will work really well with the smart grid, and it is the smart grid that is the problem. This whole concept of countries and borders and all this sort of stuff, it's all about to change. The countries and borders and governments are only there in name anyway. And they've only been constructed and put there to create this situation that we're at now, where it can all be switched over to digital. And that's what's about to happen. And China is going to be running that system. It's just all there. And if you go and look at the One Belt, One Road initiative, it's all there in it. And the people aren't really going to accept this. So China's being presented as this new wonderful thing. The new Great Wall movie that came out that showed the Chinese army, how wonderful they are, almost elf-like. Oh my God, the Chinese are so wonderful, aren't they? This whole mind thing that's going on at the moment with China to present them as this big savior of humanity. In that film, they were there saving the world from the creatures that were coming to overrun. That's what the Great Wall was all about. There's Matt Damon there, saving the day for us. I mean, the whole thing is put into the minds of the people, and this whole theater of conflict that's happening with North Korea, this will present China to the world as being the savior of the world. Just stopped World War III for us, so of course China can run this new economic Silk Road, and it's just going to be far more convenient to use Bitcoin and to use cryptocurrencies. Everyone's going to love that because they've all made so much money on them so quickly. And everyone's losing faith in the US dollar and in their general currencies around the world, the euro, whatever. Everyone's losing faith in them. So you
That's
can
what
see
scares
where
me,
it's going to
Max.
go.
Didn't mean to interrupt, but I feel like there is two factions at play here. There's one backing China and helping them out on this global stage, this theater, as you call it. And then you have the ones that is behind the US. But the thing is, um, do you think the ones that are backing the US and Britain will try to create some type of false flag event to or whatever it is to bring us to World War III because they're in fear of the power that the Chinese will, I guess, take over with?
Look, possibly, but I don't think so. I think it's all been part of the plan all the way along. I mean, the United States has trillions upon trillions of dollars in debt. Who does it owe that debt to? China.
China.
Why? Why China? Why not the World Bank? Why China? Why China of all people? Why has it spent the last 20 or 30 years building up a huge debt to China? And why has China allowed this to happen? What's it all for? Why not the World Bank? Why not England? Why not some anybody else but China? Why China? You know, because it's all designed to happen. It's all designed to go down this way.
Hmm.
All the world is a stage, brother.
Out with the
Kissinger,
old,
all
in
these
with the new.
people. Yeah, it's just a way to do it. Keep everybody guessing. There's a new world order coming online, but everyone thinks it's going to be this big police state and all this. We got these cops in black Kevlar and blah blah blah. Fair enough, but people think it's going to look like something out of Equilibrium or Nazi Journey. The new world order is the digital smart grid. The new world where everything is ordered. That's what it's about. They don't care. I mean, how can they introduce this proper Chinese work ethic, keep everybody regimented? They can only do it through the debt that the United States now has to China and just gradually introduce that system. We'll bring more work to the United States, but you got to work this way. You got to do calisthenics in the morning. You got to do this. You got to do that. You'll see 100% employment in the United States within the next 5 or 6 years, probably, because that's the way it'll be once the debt starts being collected by China. And it'll all be done gradually. It'll all be done in a way that will be accepted by the people. All the currency will be crypto. So, it's all been done by design, brother.
And then whenever they take over, and then we're going to be enslaved to their system. And then there's no telling what type of dark, sinister agendas they will have up their sleeve.
Well, it's all just more efficient ways to run the people farm. They've got the third world to work on after this. Once they've locked down the Western world,
Hmm.
which is what they're in the process of doing, then they've got the third world to work on. So they've still got a fair bit of way to go. And there's still a lot of countries that are still pretty open and still pretty good. A lot of countries in Southern Europe and in Eastern Europe that are still pretty good. So, they've got a long way to go yet. But as far as America, Australia, England, and these countries go, we're going to see some pretty quick changes there pretty soon, I think.
So you're pretty, I guess, to round things off for this time, Max. I guess, are you pretty optimistic with the future of I guess the human race? And do you think that we will overcome this slavery to the system and break away out of this matrix?
Look, I do. I have to keep optimistic. I do. I think that it will get so much in people's faces that they will stand up to it. And people are standing up to it already. Everywhere I go, I'm seeing more and more people stand up to it. So, yeah, I think we will. I think we'll come through it all. I think the politicians are exposing themselves. I think the world realizes now that we're being run by a cacistocracy. It's not even an oligarchy. It's not even the elite. It's a cacistocracy. It's ruled by the shit people. The worst elements of society have maneuvered themselves into positions where they are now ruling things. And we now realize this. We've got a bunch of criminals running the world. And more people are waking up to that, and more people are being prepared to admit that. And it's simply admitting that simple fact and looking at things from that perspective and approaching it from that perspective. It's a very, very empowering thing to do. You don't have to play by their rules. What you have to do is question their rules, question their authority, question everything they do, because all of it's bullshit. And
Hmm.
they only get away with it because we don't question any of it. We just go, oh, yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full, sir. No, we don't. But don't take on cops on the side of the road. Go to courtrooms and question it there. Question these people on their own ground in the right way. Question the people in your council meetings. Question your government. Don't worry about dealing with the police. They're just thugs. They're brain dead. They don't know either. So circumvent that little part. Go around it and talk to the politicians and talk to the judges and lawyers and let them know what you think. Let them know that the game is up. We know what's going on. Yeah, I think they can get away with it. I really don't. These things like the Empower movement, the liability notices that they're doing with smart meters and stuff, this can be applied to every single thing that you do. Just liability notices. Use their own language against them and say, well, here's the facts. So if you overstep this, then you're going to be held liable. And because I've lodged it as an affidavit, you're agreeing to that. So that's playing by your rules. There you go. It's all done. Step onto the property and you're liable. Touch my property and you're liable. So this is the way to go about it. Start using their rules against themselves. It's all fiction anyway. But they get away with it because they're big and they're brutal, and we don't speak to them in the proper language. If we simply use the proper language, then it messes them up. So I suggest people do it and get involved.
Well, Max, I tell you what, this has been a fascinating hour with you. Thank you for your service to humanity. I salute you, my friend, and thank you for waking me up and many others out there. And man, I'm telling you, your research into this whole awakening process out of this old paradigm, breaking out of this matrix, this breaking through this shit system. Your research is by far one of the best out there. And thank you very much for your time this time, Max.
My pleasure, brother. Happy to come on and have a chat anytime. Take care, all right?